Welcome to the Piece by Piece Autism Podcast with your hosts, Angie and Christy. They've worked 25 years to help Alec get the most out of life. Let them tell you how they're doing it.
We are back for another episode of Piece by Piece Autism Podcast. Christy and I here discuss lessons we've learned and continue to learn as we have raised Alec, who is almost 28 years old. He now lives in a group home setting and is a contributing member to society, holding a great job and living his best life. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the hardships of having an autistic child and how Christy has made the most of these difficult and challenging situations. Because we recognize life with an autistic child has to be serious sometimes. And we've had many serious situations, but we've all heard the saying, like, kids don't come with a manual and how much we wish they did. We've had to come up with our own, just like you're doing, I'm sure, with your families. It's obvious if you have had any time to check out our Instagram. We present Alec in a great light because it truly is the highlight reel. On Piece by Piece, we show fun, we show adventures, we show success of his hard work, wins and moments of celebration, just like most people on Instagram want to showcase the highlights. That's why we call it the highlight reel. But we don't necessarily show the hard roads and the challenges, but rest assured we have faced many of those, and we don't want to hide or make anyone feel like that hasn't been part of Alec's journey and his upbringing, because I mean, life with autism is serious at times. So we're going to touch on a few of these situations of his growing up and some of the things we're still continuing to face now.
Yeah, one of the things that made me think about this topic is a comment that I know I've shared with you, Angie, is that my next door neighbor at one point said to me, "You're no fun since your son was diagnosed." And I was like,
okay,
what?
Thanks.
Well, what I'm dealing with is a little bit serious here, and it's kind of shocked me. It's not what I was expecting. I had 3 other children, and then I get this sweet little surprise of the 4th one, who is just adorable, and I love him, and I wouldn't trade him for anything, but he is a little bit more work than the other 3.
Yeah.
And it puts me in a little bit more serious category. So one of the things that, I mean, there's several very serious things that have happened with Alec throughout his lifetime. I mean, we've got 27 years, almost 28 of these experiences, but like one of the ones that stands out in my mind is when he had his initial seizure. I had never had any access to seizures. I had no idea what one looked like except for a febrile seizure, just a small febrile seizure. I had seen happen, but having a full-grown teenager come in and collapse on you and turn blue and look like they stopped breathing to the point that you start CPR.
Yeah.
And my husband's on the phone to the 911 operator. That whole thing was extremely traumatizing.
Yeah.
And having just that initial, finding out that he has epilepsy was really a serious time in our lives and very, very difficult. So just that whole thing, including like getting his medication adjusted and going through the ins and outs of all that over the years and having, a difficult time communicating with the doctor, the things that were happening at home. No, you don't understand how this medication is affecting my child.
Well, and so many of these medications take weeks to titrate up or titrate down or have these serious side effects. And at the time that all this was happening, Alec's communication was not near at the level that it is now.
Right.
And so it really required you to be that advocate for him. But
yeah, and having a medical doctor that has no experience with autism. So he seemed to be a decent neurologist, but then he just could not fathom that this medication was affecting Alec differently than it affects other people.
Mm-hmm.
So it just, that became extremely serious because, now it's better. We've improved our neurologists. We've gotten different medications that the neurologists have been willing to try to get him on a nice set of medications that keep his seizures at bay
Mm-hmm.
and make our life a little bit more relaxed, as far as the seizures go.
Yeah, that was rough. Another sadly memorable time was a near drowning he had in the pool. This was again another traumatic one that ended with a 10-day stay in the hospital, and we found out through all of his testing that he had had a stroke at 19 years old. And this was kind of an eye-opening time because at 19, he's growing up, you're coming out. He was expressing himself and wanting to move on to bigger and better adventures and community access, and less of what we've referred to in previous podcasts as his baby programs. But it
Yes.
kind of reminded us that he still is very vulnerable and still requires a lot of outlook and, nurturing and
Right.
care in the medical side of things, especially, finding out he had this stroke was shocking. And me, oh my, the 10 days in the hospital, that was rough. Oh, that was so hard. He had more than 10 IVs. And
Yes.
what did that nurse say to us?
Well, he walked in and he sat on it was about the 8th day where he had pulled out his IV every single day. He said, "Why is he doing this?" And I said, "He doesn't like the feel of an IV in his
Yeah,
body.
who does?
And he has autism that's very severe.
Oh my
And he
gosh.
can't communicate fully his desire, although he was pretty good at communication at that point.
Mm-hmm.
There's still a little bit of a deficiency there
Right.
with saying this is happening in my body and I've got to communicate that. That's a very high level communication.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of like, are you kidding me? And he was quite frustrated. Although he had been super sweet all week, but he was
Yeah.
like so sick of it by that time. And then for the day that he had this one test that he absolutely had to have an IV, I don't know if you were there that day, but if the IV stopped in the middle, it was like really bad. And
Oh.
so it was that deal where they were testing his brain and doing just this special kind of X-ray, and they put the IV in his hand, and then they also put one in his foot.
Oh.
So he had two,
Yeah.
just in case.
Just in
two
case.
ports, and yes. And he was able to keep them in, and the minute that was over and he came to,
they were out.
they came out.
He is so fast. We call him Houdini because it was like,
Yeah.
you blink and it's done. We're like, wait, how did that happen? So we were playing games. We did like a big, huge marble maze we put together. We had all sorts of songs and movies and visitors and lunches brought in, anything to kind of keep him entertained as much as we could in that hospital room for as long as that was. And again, like our point here is, even though obviously that hospital stay was a result of something very traumatic and very serious, we did our very best together and with Alec's support and our community of people who know and care and love for him and your family to just make that the best situation we could. And so many of them showed up for Alec in addition to, supporting you and your family. But looking back we can laugh about the IVs being ripped out, but at the time we were just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to rip my own hair out too. So
it was so tough.
It was rough.
And then it was so cute because your sister's kids brought up, I found a picture the other day of this cute poster that they made out of candy bars. One of those And it was
We love
so
those.
fun. And it was just reading through it was really cute and very personalized to Alex. So
Yeah.
that made it more bearable.
Yeah.
But Alec has also had elopement issues, which are, you know, what's more serious than that? It's just so frightening.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear stories, and it's just, oh my gosh, the panic that you feel is just, it's just a real panic that you feel. And we had one situation, I mean, we've had several that turn into a 40-minute.
Mm-hmm.
40 minutes is the longest that we couldn't find him, which is incredibly long whenever we moved into a house that sat on a lake before we knew he was diagnosed.
Yeah.
And he was gone for 40 minutes. And my daughter was only, she would have only been probably 12 or 13 at the time. When she found out, she ran on the pavement all the way to the front of our subdivision, which was at least a mile, without her shoes on
Mm.
because she felt so panicked about trying to find him. And it was so sweet, but painful for her in the end because once she
Well,
could feel
yeah.
that pain of her feet, she was just like, I just had to find him. And we ended up finding him on the lot next door to ours. That was heavily treed, and we were able to find him. And he was so irritated with me when I found him. I was grabbing him and hugging him, and he was like, "Look, I'm on an adventure.
Yeah,
You
I've
know,
been
I'm
having the time of
fun
my
out here.
life.
I've got yeah. I was about to make a raft and start
Call me
rowing
Tom
across the
Sawyer.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. And he was so irritated. And that was so weird because I just happened to dress him in his camouflage pajamas that day.
Oh my gosh, of all things.
So here he is in all this foliage and stuff. And then he's got these green camouflage pajamas on.
Oh my gosh.
Had a bunch of bug bites. He had no shoes on.
Yeah.
His feet were pretty messed up, but we got him back. And then a couple times in a foreign country, he was gone for about 40 minutes also, and it was just so awful. Even though I had an ID bracelet made with
Yeah.
all of his information on it, people don't think to look at those. They
Yeah.
just, this lady standing there frantically holding on to him, but doesn't even speak English. And, you know, it was just like every time he's been given back to us after the elopement stuff, it's just such a relief. And it's just a
Yes.
reminder of, again, the vulnerable state that he lives in. And
Yeah.
just, as I was telling you, just, you know, a week or two ago, we were going into church and a man came around the parking lot and Alec tore off from me, which he doesn't normally do. He's pretty much a slow moving guy most
Yeah.
days.
Now, luckily.
Yeah, and I had to lunge forward. I missed his backpack. I was trying to grab, and the man luckily caught eyes with me and slowed down. But it reminded me again of like, wow, I thought we were over that
Yeah.
hump,
Yeah.
and
You
we're
kind of get
we're still just slightly there.
you
So
get comfortable with something and are reminded or pulled back into the realities of it. Another thing we've discussed, and I'm sure this is something everybody with a special needs kid can relate to, is just the acceptance or the struggles or the unpredictability of any given social situation or setting. You know, you're invited to, like, I know you guys were invited to a beautiful wedding that happened just a couple weeks ago, and Alec was, of course, invited as well. But you start to wonder, like, how many people are going to be there, and where are we going to sit, and will he be comfortable, and what's the dress code, and what's going to be on the menu? Is it something that Alec is going to eat? And in this particular situation, you shared with me that the bride's mother reached out, which was incredibly kind and thoughtful, to just say,
yes,
hey, how can we support Alec, or what accommodations does he need? But I think that's kind of a rare thing, is to have that thoughtful and individualized care for your special needs kid. And so just the daunting task of going out, whether it's another friend's birthday party or Is the sensory overload going to be too much? Is the drive going to be too far? I mean, there's just so many things to take into consideration, and we have faced this time and time and time again. So we don't necessarily have an answer, but just to say, we recognize, we know that these are tricky, and there are unfortunately things that you can't control in these invites.
Yeah, and I think it's also like weighing out, like we weighed out, my son, my other son and I weighed out, okay, would Alec enjoy this?
Mm-hmm.
The setting was wonderful. He would have loved that, but would he have, with his sounds, would he make loud sounds during the
Mm-hmm.
ceremony? Would we feel like one of us would have to be in a different room with him during the ceremony? There's another guy who's autistic, who's a good friend of his, who is related to the bride, and he he was going to be there, and he was great. He was hilarious. He would have loved seeing Alec, and Alec would love seeing him. But
Yeah.
when we weighed it all out, we were like, is he going to be able to sit lotus like he likes to sit? Is he going to have any, he would have loved the food, actually. They had a chicken dish that he would have loved. But just in the end, we were like, oh, good, we made the right decision.
Yeah.
Because he loves to be included.
Yes.
But then it's like a give and take. And bringing his backpack, bringing presence activities, we can make almost anything work. But it's like, you got to weigh all those things out.
Yeah. There's no doubt that there are serious and difficult challenges that you're going to face. But while it's serious, we like to say you got to laugh so you don't cry in some situations, right?
That's correct. We still cry some of the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes we do both.
Most of the time we laugh. Most of the time we're frustrated and saying, what the heck is he thinking? In fact, I got to share this story now because I think it just works. Not too long ago, just within the last couple of months, we have dealt with Alec pooping in the pool. And he has done this on and off all of his life. It's one way that he likes to communicate and hold this power over us.
That's what it is. Say it what it is.
Yep. Our reaction to this is to say, okay, if you want to make this choice, now there's going to be some limitations in your water access. And we recognize we need positive water access, but now you only get so much time, and you need to show us where you go to the bathroom and do it productively prior to getting water access. We've put all these things in place that make his leisure time in the water less fun for him. So not too long ago, I'm in the middle of making dinner, just doing my thing here at home, and I get a FaceTime from Christy and Alec, which was a highlight of my day. But Alec had been over at Christy's house and wanted to get into the hot tub, but he had not done the things that he needed to do, pooping in the toilet, to get in and have his time in the pool. And so I think, Christy, didn't you say, like, hey, we can call Jeej. We can call.
Yeah, we can call her. We can ask her, but I have a feeling I know what she's going to say. And let's be clear about what your role is here. You are our consultant, and you are the final word on Alec's programming. I'm Alec's mom, but you are his program director. And so you're the final word really on all that kind of stuff.
Well,
you're the boss.
So
we had to call the boss.
I called the boss, and I just said, like, dude, this is really a sucky situation for you that you've put yourself into this predicament, because he kind of pinned himself in a corner and was honest answering some questions about why he was doing it and who he was frustrated with. And, we were able to get that kind of communication. And I was able to say, like, look, buddy, that's a bummer that you made this choice, because now here's this consequence. And I do think, as hard it is when he is so entertaining and honest and funny, he's got such a great sense of humor. But we really had to follow through with it. And I think in doing so, you do get the message across, right? Like,
yes,
that's great for you, but kind of sucks to suck sometimes.
He was so funny, though, in his communication. And
yes.
The funny thing, too, to me that was so interesting is that he doesn't typically pick up his board which is his letter board that he communicates with, he doesn't typically pick it up and hand it to me. He typically picks it up and hands it to the person working with him, who
Right.
does it more on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
But this time he picked it up and he had me hold it. And I don't really understand the significance of that, but I thought that was interesting how he chooses to communicate, and just the things he can control, he controls, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm. So we are still facing some of those behaviors, but that was just a funny one that we have continued to laugh at because he was so adorable on the phone. And then after hanging up, Christy sent the cutest picture. He has this toy phone that he was playing with at the time, and he had it up to his ear, and she snapped a photo and was like, Cheech, please, please let me swim. So we do have to laugh at some of these just silly situations. But one thing that Christy, you've mentioned was really great and helpful in Alec's younger years specifically was having a support group. So how did you go about finding your initial support group, and how would you recommend that for new families?
Well, I think I mentioned before that we had a speech therapist that Alex started going to when he was also when he started his ABA programming, between 2.5 and 3. He started with a speech therapist 2 to 3 times a week, and we would go up to that office and we would meet other clients' parents in the waiting room. And so I met a couple of mothers there, and one of them was very involved in the support group. That was out near my part of town. And so I was able to start meeting with them. They met about once a month, and we would meet at a restaurant and we would just go over everything
Mm-hmm.
from behavioral issues we were having with our children to where do you get their hair cut? Where do you take swim lessons? How do you get therapy covered by insurance? How do you get services from the school?
Mm-hmm.
And most everyone at that point wasn't about the same boat. We actually had one person who was a special ed teacher who came, and I believe she also had a special a special needs child. And so it was very informative. We occasionally cried, but we
Yeah.
mostly were there to get information. And that's just my style. Um, Other people need other things. And I know that's true. Like they need more of an emotional connection.
Yeah.
I needed nuts and bolts. And so I found it there every time. We would get into philosophical discussions about our children. And that was interesting too, to have our relationship get to the depth that we could talk about the philosophical part of
Yeah.
why did I receive this child and my neighbor didn't,
Yeah.
stuff like that. We talked about things like that. We talked about religious things, even though all of us were different religions. And so it was really, really helpful. I loved it, and I encourage anyone to, if you don't have that kind of connection at a speech therapist's office, for example, or your OT or your behavioral analyst consultant, maybe you just look online.
Mm-hmm.
I did a search the other day just to see if I could find a support group, and it came up very quickly, support group in this area of town. And then you just have to try out different ones, because it could be that it will go and it'll be like if I had gone to one that was more on the emotional side of things and having to support each other that way, that's not what I was looking for at the time. I was looking for more nuts and bolts. So that's the kind of group I ended up with that did turn into a very warm and caring environment.
That's awesome. I think too, now, Facebook groups are so prevalent, and there's a lot of
Oh, yeah.
online resources that would connect you outside your area even. It's nice to be able
Hmm.
to get together and to meet people and to have those connections or potential friendships for your child, but there's also a reach outside of your community online that maybe wasn't as prevalent 26 years ago. So.
Absolutely. And then also just going to your school. I would assume the school could provide some support group
Yeah.
contacts.
Yeah, absolutely.
We also had a organization called FEAT, FEAT, or Families for Effective Autism Treatment of North Texas. And I went to several of their meetings. They're really good to educate about ABA. And when you're first starting out, just learning, they call it the ABCs of ABA. And they just give you the very most basic understanding of that. So if you have a FEAT organization near you, they would probably also be a good resource for finding a support group.
Well, while autism can definitely rule all aspects of life, especially with other kids at home, finding that balance of autism and normal life is super crucial. We had mentioned, again, in a previous podcast that Shala had given this advice to Christy to prioritize other children. Alec and his needs could not rule and be the center of the family. And his siblings were, Christy was told by this gal that they are his future caretakers, and to really foster and make sure that those relationships were positive. And obviously, like the story of your daughter running after him in the street, like that genuine care and need and weight was carried by the other children in the home. But just finding that balance and not letting that become too much. So all of that to say, address the issues. Obviously, the behaviors are going to outshine other moments because they do need to be addressed in a timely manner. But just knowing that life can be light and bright and fun, and your other kids can thrive and be better for the experiences that they have as a sibling to somebody with special needs. So we do our best in Alec's home to keep a light and bright feel. We like the lines to be open, and we like there to be, music going and games being played and all the learning and things that happen in his home and his teaching environment. We do our best to make his home that airy and enjoyable place where when people come in, they feel happy to be there. So laugh when you can, cry when you have to, find your support group, and do your best to enjoy the moments, because we know that life with autism can be serious, but it doesn't have to every single day.
Right. Totally agree.
We're glad you were able to join us today on Piece by Piece. We love that you're here and hope that you will help us spread the word and share the show. Find us on Instagram and Facebook at Piece by Piece Autism Podcast. That's PIECE, Piece by Piece Autism Podcast. We can't wait to chat next time. Talk to you then. Bye.
Bye. That was good.